Mirror arrived on my 16th birthday in a box that smelled like death and old perfume. I'm Maya, and I should probably mention that I hate antiques. They're creepy, they smell weird, and they always come with some boring story about great whatever who used to own them. But this mirror was different. When I touched the frame, I swear it hummed under my fingers like it was alive. "Careful with that," Grandma Celeste warned, her voice sharp. She stood in the doorway of my bedroom, wringing her hands. "It's been in our family for generations." I rolled my eyes. "It's just a mirror, Grandma." She didn't smile. "No, Maya, it's much more than that." I thought Grandma was being dramatic, which wasn't unusual. She was the kind of person who believed in ghosts, fortune tellers, and that wearing socks to bed would give you nightmares. Still, something about the way she looked at the mirror made my skin prickle. The frame was silver, covered in strange symbols I didn't recognize. The glass itself was perfect, no scratches, no age spots, nothing. "How old is this thing?" I asked, running my finger along the edge. Grandma's face went pale. "Old enough to know things it shouldn't." Then she left my room without another word. I stood there, confused and slightly annoyed. Why did adults always have to be so mysterious? I propped the mirror against my wall and forgot about it. Big mistake. That night I woke up to whispering. At first I thought it was my older brother, Kyle, messing with me through the wall. He loved pranking me, especially after I'd accidentally told his girlfriend about his obsession with boy bands. But the whispering wasn't coming from the wall. It was coming from the mirror. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering. The mirror was glowing faintly in the darkness, and I could see shapes moving in the glass. Not my reflection, something else. "Hello," I whispered, immediately feeling stupid. Mirrors don't talk, but this one did. "Maya," it breathed, and the voice sounded like wind through dead leaves. "Come closer." I should have run screaming. Instead, like an idiot in a horror movie, I got out of bed. I crept toward the mirror, my bare feet cold on the wooden floor. The whispering grew louder as I got closer. "That's it," the voice encouraged. "Look into the glass, see what we've been hiding." I leaned forward, and instead of seeing my own face, I saw a woman. She looked like me, but older, maybe in her 30s, with the same dark hair and green eyes. She was crying. "Help me," she mouthed, her hands pressed against the glass from the inside. I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my mouth to stop myself from screaming. The woman in the mirror reached toward me, and for a terrifying second, I thought she was going to come through. Then the image vanished, and I was staring at my own terrified reflection. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat on my bed, watching the mirror, waiting for it to do something else weird. It didn't. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself I'd dreamed the whole thing. Almost. At breakfast, I was exhausted and jumpy. Mom asked if I was feeling okay. "Fine," I lied, stabbing my eggs with unnecessary force. "Just bad dreams," Kyle snorted. "Let me guess, you dreamed you actually passed your math test." I kicked him under the table. "At least I don't cry during sad commercials." He turned red. "That was one time, and the puppy was lost." Mom sighed. "Can we have one breakfast without you two acting like toddlers?" I wanted to tell her about the mirror, but how do you explain that an antique is haunted without sounding crazy? After school, I went straight to Grandma Celeste's house. She lived 3 blocks away in a cottage that smelled like cinnamon and secrets. She was in her garden, talking to her roses like they were people. "Grandma, we need to talk about the mirror." She straightened up, her face suddenly serious. "Come inside." We sat at her kitchen table, and she poured us both tea I didn't want. "The mirror shows the truth," she said finally. "It shows the women in our family what we've been hiding from ourselves." I frowned. "What does that mean?" Grandma took a sip of tea, buying time. "Every woman in the Patterson family has looked into that mirror on her 16th birthday, and every one of them has seen something different." "What did you see?" I asked. Grandma's hands trembled around her cup. "I saw my sister Charlotte. She died when we were young. In the mirror, she told me how it really happened." The kitchen suddenly felt cold. "How did it happen?" Grandma's eyes filled with tears. "She drowned in the lake behind our old house. Everyone said it was an accident, but Charlotte showed me the truth. Our father pushed her. She discovered he was stealing from his business partner. He couldn't let her tell." My mouth fell open. "That's insane," Grandma nodded. "I didn't believe it either, not until I found Charlotte's diary hidden in the attic. She'd written everything down. My father was a thief and a murderer." I felt sick. "Did you tell anyone?" Grandma shook her head. "Who would believe me? A girl claiming a mirror showed her the truth. They would have locked me away." She reached across the table and gripped my hand. The mirror only shows truth to Patterson women. It's our curse and our gift. I pulled my hand away. I don't want this gift. That woman I saw, who was she? Grandma's expression turned grim. That's what you need to find out. The mirror showed her to you for a reason. Someone in our family has a secret, Maya. And it's your job to uncover it. I laughed, but it came out shaky. You're telling me I'm supposed to be some kind of supernatural detective? Grandma didn't smile. I'm telling you that if you ignore the mirror, the truth will find another way to surface, and it won't be gentle. I went home more confused than ever. That night, I set up my phone to record the mirror while I slept. If something weird happened, I wanted proof. Sure enough, at exactly 3:17 a.m., my phone captured it. The mirror glowed and the same woman appeared, but this time she wasn't alone. A man stood behind her, his face in shadow. He had his hands around her throat. I watched the video 3 times, my stomach churning. The woman was being murdered, but who was she? And why was the mirror showing me this? I needed answers, and I knew where to start. Our family photo albums were stored in the attic. If this woman was a Patterson, she'd be in there somewhere. The attic was dusty and filled with boxes labeled in my grandmother's neat handwriting. I found the photo albums in a trunk that looked older than Grandma herself. I started flipping through pages, looking for anyone who resembled the woman in the mirror. It took me 2 hours, but I finally found her. The photo was from 1987, and the caption read, "Veronica Patterson, Summer Vacation." Veronica was my grandmother's cousin. I'd never heard anyone mention her. I took the photo downstairs and showed it to Mom. "Who's this?" Mom squinted at the picture. "I don't know, ask your grandmother." But something in her voice told me she was lying. Mom was a terrible liar. Her left eye always twitched. It was twitching now. "Mom, what happened to Veronica?" I pressed. Mom set down the photo like it had burned her. "Veronica died a long time ago, before you were born. It's not something we talk about." I crossed my arms. "Why not?" Mom's face flushed. "Because some things are better left in the past, Maya. Drop it." But I couldn't drop it. Not when the mirror was showing me Veronica being strangled. Not when my own mother was clearly hiding something. That evening, I called Aunt Helena, Mom's older sister. If anyone would tell me the truth, it was Helena. She had no filter and loved gossip more than she loved her 3 ex-husbands. "Veronica Patterson," Helena repeated when I asked. "Oh, honey, that's a dark story. Are you sure you want to know?" I sat on my bed, phone pressed to my ear. "I need to know," Helena sighed. "Veronica was married to a man named Frank Cooper. He was handsome, charming, and completely awful. He cheated on her constantly, gambled away their money, and from what I heard, he hit her too." My chest tightened. "What happened to her?" Helena's voice dropped. "She disappeared in 1989, vanished without a trace. Frank claimed she left him, ran off with another man, but Veronica's family never believed it. She would never have left without saying goodbye." I swallowed hard. "Did anyone investigate?" Helena made a bitter sound. "The police did a half-hearted search, but Frank had connections. Rich family, important friends. The case went cold after a month." After I hung up with Helena, I sat in the dark, thinking. The mirror had shown me Veronica being murdered. If I was seeing the truth, that meant Frank had killed her. But Veronica disappeared 35 years ago. Frank was probably dead by now. What was I supposed to do with this information? I looked at the mirror, and for the first time I spoke to it directly. "Why are you showing me this? What do you want me to do?" The mirror's surface rippled like water, and words appeared in the glass, written in silvery script. "Find me. Tell them what he did. Let me rest." My hands were shaking. The mirror wanted me to find Veronica's body. It wanted me to prove Frank had murdered her. The next day at school, I couldn't concentrate. My best friend, Zara, noticed immediately. "You look like you've seen a ghost." She had no idea how right she was. "Family drama," I muttered. Zara raised an eyebrow. "The interesting kind or the boring kind?" I almost laughed. "The my family heirloom is haunted and wants me to solve a murder kind." Zara stared at me. "Girl, you need sleep." I wished it were that simple. After school, I went back to Grandma's house. "I need to know more about Veronica," I said without preamble. Grandma looked up from her knitting. "So the mirror showed you her?" It wasn't a question. I nodded. "She was murdered by her husband, Frank, and I think she wants me to find her body." Grandma set down her knitting needles carefully. "I always suspected Frank killed her, but I could never prove it." She stood up, her joints creaking. "Wait here." She disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a shoebox. Inside were letters all addressed to Veronica Patterson. These came after she disappeared, Grandma explained. Frank returned them unopened, claimed she never wanted to hear from her family again, but I kept them. I knew something was wrong. I picked up one of the envelopes. The return address was from someone named Ruth Patterson, Veronica's mother, my great-great-aunt. Did Ruth believe Frank? I asked. Grandma's face hardened. Ruth died of a broken heart 2 years after Veronica vanished. She never stopped looking for her daughter. I spent the evening reading through Ruth's letters to Veronica. They were heartbreaking, full of love, worry, and desperate pleas for Veronica to come home. In one letter, Ruth wrote, "Your father and I drove past the old Cooper property today, the place where Frank's family used to have their summer cabin. It's abandoned now, falling apart. I couldn't help but think of all those summers you spent there before everything went wrong. I wish I could turn back time." The old Cooper property. My mind raced. If Frank had killed Veronica, where would he hide her body? Somewhere remote. Somewhere he knew well. Somewhere like an abandoned family cabin. I grabbed my phone and started searching for information about the Cooper family property. It took me 3 days of research, but I finally found it. The Cooper cabin was 40 miles outside of town, deep in the woods near Silver Lake. According to property records, it had been abandoned since the early 1990s. Frank had died in 2003, and his children had never bothered with the cabin. It was perfect, isolated, forgotten, and exactly the kind of place where you could hide a body. I knew what I had to do. I had to go to that cabin, but I couldn't go alone. That night, I told Kyle everything. He listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You realize how crazy this sounds, right?" I nodded. "I know, but I have to check. Please, Kyle, I need your help." Kyle sighed. "If I say no, you'll just go by yourself and probably get murdered by a ghost or something." I smiled. "Probably." He shook his head. "Fine, but we're bringing flashlights, pepper spray, and telling someone where we're going. I'm not dying in some creepy cabin for a family mystery." The following Saturday, we told Mom we were going hiking. It wasn't entirely a lie. We borrowed Grandma's car and drove to Silver Lake. The road to the cabin was overgrown, barely visible through the trees. When we finally found it, my stomach dropped. The cabin looked like something from a nightmare, windows broken, door hanging off its hinges, the whole structure sagging like it was tired of standing. "This is definitely where people get murdered," Kyle muttered. We parked and approached carefully. The inside of the cabin was worse than the outside. Everything was rotted and covered in a thick layer of dust and leaves. Animals had clearly been living there for years. "What are we even looking for?" Kyle asked, shining his flashlight around. I pulled out my phone and opened the video of the mirror. In the background of Veronica's image, I could see part of a room, wooden walls, a stone fireplace, a window with a specific shape. "We're looking for this room." We searched the cabin systematically. Most of it was just one big open space, but there was a small room in the back, behind what used to be a bedroom. The door was stuck, swollen from years of moisture. Kyle kicked it open. The room was tiny, more like a closet, but it had the wooden walls, the window shape, and when I looked up, I could see the remnants of what had once been a stone fireplace in the main cabin. This was the room from the mirror. "We need to check the floor," I said. Kyle gave me a look. "You think she's buried here?" I nodded. We cleared away the debris and examined the floorboards. Most were original, warped and stained with age. But in the corner, several boards looked newer, less weathered. Kyle and I exchanged glances. He used a crowbar from the car to pry up the boards. The smell hit us first, earthy and stale. Then we saw it. Bones. A human skeleton still wearing the remains of a dress, a tarnished wedding ring on one finger. I couldn't breathe. We'd found her. We'd found Veronica. Kyle was already on his phone, calling the police. I knelt beside the remains, tears streaming down my face. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry it took this long." My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from an unknown number. "Thank you." I looked around the ruined cabin, and for just a second I saw her. Veronica stood in the doorway, smiling. She looked peaceful, finally free. Then she faded away like morning mist. The police arrived within an hour. They were skeptical at first, two teenagers with a wild story about finding a body in an abandoned cabin. But the bones didn't lie. Neither did the forensic evidence. The remains were identified as Veronica Patterson within a week. The case reopened, and even though Frank was dead, the truth finally came out. Detectives found old evidence that had been ignored. Veronica's blood in Frank's car, neighbors who'd heard them fighting the night she disappeared, financial records showing Frank had been desperate for money. He'd killed her, probably during a fight, and hid her body where he thought no one would ever look. The Patterson family finally had closure. We held a proper funeral for Veronica, burying her next to her mother, Ruth. The whole family came, including relatives I'd never met. Grandma Celeste cried through the entire service. Afterwards, she hugged me tight. "You did a good thing, Maya. You gave Veronica peace." I looked at the mirror, which I'd brought to the funeral in my car. Its surface was clear and still, no longer glowing. That night, I stood in front of the mirror one last time. "Is it over?" I asked. The mirror didn't respond. No whispers, no glowing, no mysterious messages. It was just a mirror again. Or maybe it had always been just a mirror, and I'd been the one with the power to see the truth. I thought about what Grandma had said, that the mirror shows Patterson women what we've been hiding from ourselves. Maybe it wasn't about magic at all. Maybe it was about being brave enough to look at the hard things, to dig up the secrets that everyone wanted to keep buried. I didn't know if I'd ever see anything in the mirror again, but if I did, I wouldn't be afraid. Because I'd learned something important. The truth might be scary, but it's always worth finding. Mom eventually admitted she'd known something was wrong about Veronica's disappearance. "We all suspected," she said, "but no one wanted to make waves. Frank's family was powerful. We convinced ourselves it was easier to just let it go." She looked at me with something like admiration. "You were braver than any of us." Kyle, of course, couldn't resist turning the whole thing into a joke. "My sister, the ghost whisperer," he'd announced to anyone who'd listen. "She talks to dead people through antique mirrors." Completely normal teenage behavior. But he'd been there when it mattered, and I knew he was proud of me, even if he'd never admit it without making fun of me first. That was just how siblings worked. Annoying, but loyal when things got serious. Zara demanded to hear every detail at least 5 times. "This is literally the coolest thing that's ever happened to anyone I know," she said. "You're like a supernatural detective." I laughed. "I'm just a girl who inherited a weird mirror." But secretly, I kind of liked being the supernatural detective. It beat being that girl who failed her driver's test 3 times, which was my previous claim to fame. Grandma Celeste gave me something at Veronica's funeral, a journal. "Every Patterson woman who's looked into the mirror has kept a record," she explained. "Now it's your turn." I flipped through the pages. Generations of women had written about what they'd seen, what truths they'd uncovered, what secrets they'd brought to light. Some stories were small, family lies about inheritances, hidden affairs, petty betrayals. Others were darker, like Veronica's story, like Grandma's story about her sister Charlotte. I started writing that night. I wrote about finding the mirror, about the whispers, about Veronica and the cabin and the bones in the floor. I wrote about how scared I'd been, but also how right it felt to give her justice. When I finished, I added my entry to the journal and placed it on my bookshelf next to the mirror. I wondered what the next Patterson girl would see when she turned 16. What secret would the mirror reveal to her? Would she be brave enough to face it? I hoped so. Because that's what Patterson women did. We looked at the hard truths. We dug up the secrets. We brought light to the darkness, even when it was terrifying. The mirror had taught me that. Or maybe I'd known it all along, and the mirror had just shown me my own reflection. A month after Veronica's funeral, something strange happened. I was cleaning my room when I noticed the symbols on the mirror's frame were glowing faintly. I touched them, and suddenly I understood what they said. They weren't random decorations, they were names. The names of every Patterson woman who'd ever used the mirror, going back over 200 years. My name was at the bottom, freshly carved into the silver like the mirror itself had added it. I ran my finger over the letters, Maya Patterson. I was part of the legacy now, part of the chain of women who'd chosen truth over comfort, justice over peace. It was terrifying and thrilling and overwhelming all at once. "Thanks for the pressure," I muttered to the mirror, but I was smiling. Life slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after solving a decades-old murder with the help of a haunted mirror. I went back to school, struggled through math tests, argued with Kyle about whose turn it was to do the dishes. But something had changed in me. I paid attention to things I'd missed before, the way people's voices changed when they lied, the stories that didn't quite add up, the secrets hidden in plain sight. Maybe I didn't need a magical mirror to see the truth. Maybe I just needed to look. Still, I kept the mirror in my room just in case, because you never knew when the past would come calling. And when it did, the Patterson women would be ready. We always were. Years later, when I'm older and have daughters of my own, I'll pass the mirror to them. I'll tell them about Veronica and Charlotte and all the other women whose truths were buried until the mirror brought them back to light. I'll tell them that the mirror isn't magic, it's a reminder. A reminder that truth matters, that justice matters, that the dead deserve to be remembered and the living deserve to know what really happened. And when they look into the glass on their 16th birthdays, they'll see whatever truth needs to be told. Because that's what Patterson women do. We whisper back to the past, and we make sure the dead finally get to rest. The mirror taught me that. And now, like everything else in our family, it's my turn to pass the lesson on. The Whispering Heirloom Part 2. The mirror strikes again. 3 months after we buried Veronica Patterson, I thought my supernatural detective days were over. Wrong. So incredibly wrong. It started on a Tuesday, because apparently all the weird stuff in my life happens on Tuesdays, when I walked into my bedroom and found my little cousin, Becca, standing in front of the mirror. She was 7 years old, obsessed with unicorns, and absolutely not supposed to be in my room. "Becca, what are you doing?" I demanded. She turned to me with wide eyes. "The pretty lady in the mirror told me to come look." My blood ran cold. "What pretty lady?" Becca pointed at the mirror. "Her. She says her name is Constance and she needs your help." I looked at the mirror. Sure enough, there was a new woman staring back at me. She wore old-fashioned clothes from maybe the 1950s and had the most judgmental expression I'd ever seen. Great. Another dead Patterson with problems. I managed to get Becca out of my room by promising her my entire stash of chocolate chips. Then I locked the door and faced the mirror. "Okay, Constance, what's your deal?" The woman's lips moved, but I couldn't hear her. I leaned closer, and suddenly her voice filled my head like she was speaking directly into my brain. "Maya Patterson, I need you to fix a terrible mistake." I groaned. "Can it wait? I just solved a murder. I need a break." Constance's expression turned even more sour. "I've been waiting 70 years. You can wait on your Netflix shows." I blinked. Did this ghost just sass me about Netflix? "Fine, what's the terrible mistake?" Constance crossed her arms. "I accidentally got engaged to the wrong man. Well, not accidentally, I got confused. There were 2 men, you see, both named William. One was wonderful, one was a weasel. I picked the weasel." I stared at the mirror. "So you want me to, what, travel back in time and tell past you to pick the other William?" Constance rolled her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous. Time travel isn't real." This was coming from a dead woman talking to me through a mirror. "Then what do you want?" Constance leaned forward. "I want you to find the wonderful William's descendants and tell them that I loved him, that I made a mistake, that he deserved better than me." I sat on my bed. "That's it. You've been haunting this mirror for 70 years because you picked the wrong boyfriend." Constance's face crumpled. "It wasn't just a boyfriend, we were soulmates, but I got them confused at a dance because they were both wearing blue suits and I'd had too much punch." I tried not to laugh, I really did. "But come on. You married the wrong guy because of a wardrobe mix-up." Constance started crying. "It was dark, and I have terrible eyesight. Don't judge me." This was already way more ridiculous than Veronica's murder mystery. I called Kyle into my room. He took one look at my face and groaned. "What now?" I pointed at the mirror. "New ghost, she picked the wrong William." Kyle stared at me. "The wrong what?" I explained the whole situation. By the end, Kyle was laughing so hard he had to sit down. "Let me get this straight, this lady." He pointed at Constance, who glared at him. Married the wrong dude because she couldn't tell 2 Williams apart. Constance's voice boomed from the mirror. "I can't hear you, you disrespectful child." Kyle jumped. "Did she just yell at me through a mirror?" I nodded. "Welcome to my life." He shook his head. "Your life is so weird. Tell me about it." The next day at school, I tried to focus on normal teenage problems like homework and whether Jake Collins was actually flirting with me or just being nice. But Constance kept appearing in every reflective surface. Bathroom mirror. Constance. My phone screen. Constance. The back of my spoon at lunch. Tiny, angry Constance. "This is getting creepy," Zara said, watching me avoid looking at any shiny objects. "The new ghost won't leave me alone," I muttered. Zara grinned. "You know, most people our age worry about acne and Instagram followers. You worry about angry ghosts stalking you through mirrors. It's kind of iconic." I threw a French fry at her. It's kind of annoying. But I had to admit, there was something funny about Constance's persistence. She was like a supernatural telemarketer who wouldn't take no for an answer. That afternoon, I went to Grandma Celeste with the Patterson family journal. I found Constance's entry from 1952. Constance Patterson married William Fletcher on June 15, 1952, I read aloud. The marriage lasted 6 miserable months before William ran off with the neighbor's daughter and all of Constance's jewelry. Grandma peered at the journal. Ah, yes, Constance. My mother told me about her. Absolute disaster of a woman. Could barely boil water without setting something on fire. I looked up. She set fires. Grandma waved her hand. Only 3 times, 4 if you count the incident with the Christmas tree, but that was technically the cat's fault. I was almost afraid to ask. What happened after William ran off? Grandma's expression softened. Constance spent the rest of her life alone. She was too embarrassed to admit she'd married the wrong man. The other William moved away and married someone else. I felt a pang of sympathy. Sure, Constance was annoying and had terrible judgment, but she'd spent her whole life regretting one mistake. Do we know what happened to the good William? Grandma nodded. William Carter. He moved to Oregon, had 3 children, and lived to be 92. By all accounts, he was very happy. I thought about this. So what's the point of telling his descendants about Constance? He moved on. He was happy. Grandma smiled sadly. Maybe Constance needs to know he was happy. Maybe that's her closure, knowing she didn't ruin his life by picking the wrong William. That actually made sense, which was surprising because nothing about this situation made sense. I looked at the mirror in Grandma's hallway. Constance appeared immediately. Well, she demanded. Have you found him? I sighed. Working on it, give me a minute. Also, can you stop appearing in my spoon? It's really unsettling. Finding William Carter's descendants turned out to be easier than I expected. Kyle, who was surprisingly good at internet stalking, found them in 2 hours. The Carters still live in Oregon, he announced, showing me his laptop. William had 3 kids, and they had kids, and those kids had kids. There's a whole family tree online. I looked at the screen. So what do I do? Call them up and say, hi, your great-grandfather's old girlfriend wants to apologize for marrying the wrong guy. Kyle shrugged. I mean, it's not the weirdest conversation starter in our family. He had a point. I found the email address for William's granddaughter, Patricia Carter. She ran a genealogy blog about the Carter family history. If anyone would appreciate a weird historical romance story, it would be her. I spent an hour crafting the perfect email, explaining who I was and asking if she'd be interested in hearing about her grandfather's past. Patricia responded within a day. I'd love to hear about my grandfather's youth. He rarely talked about his life before Oregon. Please call me. I called her that evening, and she answered on the second ring. Maya, this is so exciting. Tell me everything. I took a deep breath. So my great-great-aunt Constance was in love with your grandfather, but there was a mix-up at a dance, and she accidentally got engaged to a different William. The wrong William. There was a long pause. Then Patricia burst out laughing. You're telling me my grandfather lost the love of his life to a case of mistaken identity? When she put it that way, it sounded like a bad sitcom plot. Basically, yes. Patricia was still chuckling. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I love it. What happened to Constance? I explained about the terrible marriage and Constance's lonely life. Patricia's laughter faded. Oh, that's sad. The thing is, I continued, Constance wanted me to find you guys and tell you she made a mistake, that your grandfather deserved better. I think she needs to know he was happy without her. Patricia was quiet for a moment. My grandfather was incredibly happy. He married my grandmother, Dorothy, and they were together for 60 years. He used to say she was the best thing that ever happened to him. I felt my eyes sting. Really? Patricia's voice was warm. Really? And you know what? I think it's beautiful that Constance cared enough to check. Tell her my grandfather lived a wonderful life. Tell her he wouldn't have changed a thing. I promised I would. When I hung up, I felt lighter. Maybe some mistakes worked out for the best. Maybe Constance's wrong choice led William to his right choice. That night, I stood in front of the mirror. Constance appeared immediately. Well, what did they say? I smiled. William was happy, really happy. He married someone named Dorothy, and they were together for 60 years. He had kids and grandkids and a great life. Constance's face crumpled, but this time with relief. He was happy, I nodded. So happy. Patricia said he wouldn't have changed anything. Tears rolled down Constance's cheeks. I was so afraid I'd ruined his life, that he spent his years as miserable as I did. I felt a lump in my throat. You didn't ruin anything. You just weren't meant to be together, and that's okay. Constance pressed her hand against the glass. Thank you, Maya, you've given me such peace. The mirror glowed softly, and Constance faded away, a smile on her face. I sat on my bed, emotionally exhausted. 2 down, I muttered. How many more dead Patterson women are waiting in line? The mirror sparkled. I groaned. That was rhetorical. The next ghost appeared a week later. I was brushing my teeth when a teenage girl materialized in the bathroom mirror. She had 1980s hair that defied gravity and was wearing the most aggressive shoulder pads I'd ever seen. Hi, she chirped. I'm Sylvia Patterson, are you Maya? I spit out my toothpaste. Seriously, another one? Sylvia looked offended. Excuse me, I've been waiting very patiently for Constance to finish her emotional crisis. Do you know how boring it is being dead? There's literally nothing to do. I stared at her. What do you want? Sylvia grinned. I need you to deliver a message to my ex-boyfriend. His name is Roger, and he was a total jerk who told everyone I had a crush on Mr. Henderson, our history teacher. Which was true, but that's not the point. The point is, Roger was a snitch. I blinked. You've been dead for, 30 years, and you want revenge on your high school boyfriend. Sylvia crossed her arms. 34 years, and yes, Roger spread that rumor right before prom. I had to leave town from embarrassment, never got to graduate properly. I couldn't believe this. So what do you want me to do? Find Roger and tell him he's a jerk? Sylvia's eyes lit up. Yes, exactly. Tell him Sylvia Patterson says he's a snitch and karma is real. This was so petty. So incredibly, hilariously petty. I loved it. Fine, but you have to tell me how you died. Sylvia's face fell. Oh, that's less fun. I choked on a jawbreaker while driving. Very embarrassing. My tombstone doesn't mention it, thank God. I tried not to laugh. I failed. Sylvia glared at me. It's not funny. It was a little funny. Finding Roger turned out to be complicated. There are like 50 Rogers in the state, Kyle complained, scrolling through search results. We need more information. I went back to the mirror. Sylvia, what's Roger's last name? She appeared instantly. Morrison, Roger Morrison. I froze. I thought you said you were a Patterson. Sylvia rolled her eyes. I am. Patterson was my maiden name. Roger was my boyfriend, not my husband. Pay attention. Kyle looked up from his laptop. Wait, did she say Morrison? As in Roger Morrison, who runs the car dealership downtown. Sylvia squealed. That's him. Oh my God, he's still in town. This is perfect. I had a bad feeling about this. Sylvia, what exactly do you want me to say to him? Sylvia's grin turned wicked. Tell him his hair plugs look ridiculous, and that I know he lied about having a college scholarship, and that his wife should check his phone because he's definitely texting someone named Brandy with an I. Held up my hand. Okay, first of all, how do you know all this? Sylvia shrugged. Being dead gives you access to a lot of information. I can basically haunt anyone I want for a few hours. It's great for catching up on gossip. I was starting to think the Patterson women had too much power. Second, I can't just walk into a car dealership and start insulting a stranger. Sylvia pouted. Why not? Kyle snorted. Because Maya doesn't have a death wish, or a lawyer. I thought about it. What if we sent an anonymous letter? Sylvia considered this. Can you make it sound really mysterious, like it's from beyond the grave? I grinned. I can work with that. 20 minutes later, Kyle and I had crafted the most dramatic anonymous letter in history. Dear Roger Morrison, this message comes from someone you wronged long ago. Sylvia Patterson remembers what you did. She sees everything now. Your secrets aren't safe. The truth has a way of surfacing. Sincerely, the past. Kyle read it aloud and burst out laughing. This is so over the top. I sealed the envelope. That's the point. We need to scare him a little. We mailed the letter that afternoon. 3 days later, Sylvia appeared in my mirror, cackling. Oh my God, Maya, Roger freaked out. He called all his old high school friends asking if anyone had talked to Sylvia recently. When they reminded him I was dead, he went pale. I couldn't help but smile. So you're satisfied? Sylvia nodded enthusiastically. Completely. Thank you, this has been the highlight of my death. She paused. Well, second highlight. First was watching my nemesis, Brenda, trip during the senior talent show, but this is a close second. The mirror glowed and Sylvia faded away, still laughing. Kyle shook his head. Your ghost problems are getting weirder. I had to agree. At least Veronica's case had been serious. Now I was apparently running a supernatural revenge service for petty dead people. What was next? A ghost who wanted me to tell her friend. She was right about that recipe. Turns out, yes. The next ghost was Great-Aunt Meredith, who died in 1998 and desperately needed me to tell her former best friend that her casserole recipe was wrong. She used oregano, Meredith wailed. Everyone knows you use basil, but would she listen? No, and now people remember her casserole instead of mine. I was sitting in math class when Meredith appeared in my calculator screen. I almost screamed. Mr. Patterson looked at me. Everything okay, Maya? I nodded quickly, just frustrated with fractions. He nodded sympathetically. Fractions are hard. If only fractions were my biggest problem. That night I called a family meeting. Mom, Kyle, and Grandma Celeste gathered in the living room. We need to talk about the mirror, I announced. Mom looked nervous. Is something wrong? I laughed. Where do I even start? I've had 4 ghosts in 2 months, and they're getting progressively more ridiculous. The last one wanted revenge over a casserole recipe. Grandma Celeste tried not to smile. Meredith was always passionate about cooking. Kyle sprawled on the couch. Maya's become a supernatural therapist. She should start charging. Mom frowned. I thought the mirror only showed up once per Patterson woman. Why is Maya getting multiple ghosts? Grandma's expression turned thoughtful. Maybe because Maya actually does something about what she sees. The mirror probably realized it finally found someone who will help. Great. I was the Patterson family's designated ghost helper because I was the only one who actually followed through. This was what I got for being responsible. Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. Honey, if this is too much, you can tell the mirror to stop. I looked at the mirror hanging on the wall. Even from here, I could see multiple faces crowding the glass. Dead Patterson women, all waiting their turn, all needing something, I sighed. I don't think it works that way. The casserole situation was surprisingly easy to solve. Great-Aunt Meredith's former best friend, Carol, was still alive and living in a retirement home. I visited her, bringing flowers and a cover story about doing a school project on family recipes. Carol was delighted. Meredith's casserole recipe, she said. Oh, I remember that. She was so particular about it. I leaned forward. Do you remember what ingredients she used? Carol nodded. Basil, ground beef, tomatoes, and her secret ingredient, a pinch of sugar to cut the acidity. I pulled out my phone and pretended to take notes. That sounds delicious, better than the one with oregano. Carol's face scrunched up. Oregano? Who puts oregano in a casserole? That would taste terrible. I grinned. That's what I thought. When I reported back to Meredith, she literally did a victory dance in the mirror. I knew it. I knew I was right. Take that, Carol, and your weird oregano obsession. After Meredith faded away, satisfied that her culinary legacy was restored, I thought maybe I'd get a break. Nope. The mirror had other plans. That weekend, 5 more ghosts appeared, all talking at once. There was Florence, who wanted me to prove she won the church bake-off in 1967. She didn't, but I wasn't telling her that. There was Beatrice, who needed me to find her missing cat's descendants. Yes, cat descendants. There was Ingrid, who wanted revenge on a bridge club that kicked her out in 1975. And then there was Violet, who just wanted someone to know she'd invented a really good system for organizing socks. This is insane, I told Kyle. I can't help all of them. Kyle looked at the mirror, where all 5 ghosts were waving frantically. Maybe you need to set boundaries. Tell them you can only help 1 ghost a month or something. That was actually a good idea. Why was my annoying brother being helpful? I stood in front of the mirror that evening. Listen up, Patterson ghosts. New rules. All the faces in the mirror turned toward me. I felt like I was giving a presentation, which was weird because my audience was dead. I'm a 16-year-old girl with homework, social anxiety, and a life. I can't solve all your problems immediately. So here's how this is going to work. 1 ghost per month. You'll have to take turns. And if your problem is petty, like the casserole thing, it goes to the bottom of the list. There was immediate uproar in the mirror. Ghosts started arguing with each other. I was here first. My problem is more important. You're all being ridiculous. I covered my ears. See, this is why we need rules. A new voice cut through the chaos. Quiet. Everyone, including me, went silent. A woman I didn't recognize appeared in the center of the mirror. She was old, regal, and looked like she didn't tolerate nonsense. Who are you? I asked. The woman studied me with sharp eyes. I'm Adelaide Patterson. I started this whole mirror tradition back in 1822. My jaw dropped. You're the original, Adelaide nodded. And these women are being absurd. Maya's right, we need organization. She turned to the other ghosts. Form a proper queue. Serious matters first, murders, injustices, stolen identities. Then personal matters, lost loves, unfinished business. Petty nonsense goes last. The ghosts grumbled but started organizing themselves. Adelaide turned back to me. You're doing good work, child, but don't let them take advantage. Being dead doesn't excuse bad manners. I liked Adelaide. She reminded me of Grandma Celeste. Thank you. Adelaide started to fade. One more thing, there's a Patterson girl being born next month. Your cousin, Stephanie, is having a daughter. The mirror will eventually call to her too. Prepare her better than we prepared you. Then she was gone. I stood there, processing. A new Patterson girl. Another supernatural detective in training. I should probably write a manual or something. The next few months settled into a strange routine. One ghost per month, just like I'd promised. I helped Florence, except that she came in second at the bake-off. There were photos. I tracked down Beatrice's cat's great-great-great-grandkitten. It was living with a family in Nevada and was very fat and happy. I convinced Ingrid's old bridge club to posthumously apologize for kicking her out. They'd thought she was cheating, but she was just really good at cards. And I helped Violet publish her sock organization system online, where it became moderately popular among neat freaks. Each ghost taught me something. Florence taught me that losing doesn't mean failure. Beatrice taught me that love extends beyond death, even for pets. Ingrid taught me that sometimes people make wrong assumptions. And Violet taught me that everyone wants to leave something behind, even if it's just a really efficient way to sort footwear. Kyle found the whole thing hilarious. My sister helps dead people organize their socks. This is my life now. Zara was equally entertained. You're like a supernatural life coach. You should have business cards. Maya Patterson, ghost problems solved, reasonable rates. I threw a pillow at her. I don't charge the dead. That seems wrong. Zara caught the pillow. Fair point, but you should at least get school credit. This is basically community service. She wasn't wrong. I'd helped more people, dead people, but still in 6 months than most volunteers did in years. Maybe I should put it on my college applications. Extensive experience in conflict resolution, historical research, and communicating with the deceased. That would definitely make me stand out. Mom was less thrilled about my ghost helping hobby. I worry about you, sweetheart, she said one evening. This is a lot of pressure for someone your age. I understood her concern, but honestly, I didn't mind. Sure, it was weird and sometimes frustrating, but it also felt important. These women had been forgotten, their stories buried. I was giving them voice, giving them closure. That mattered. Grandma Celeste's perspective was different. Every Patterson woman handles the mirror differently, she told me. Some ignore it, some use it once and never again. But you, Maya, you've embraced it, you've turned it into something beautiful. I hadn't thought about it that way. It's just a mirror, Grandma, she shook her head. It's never just a mirror, it's our family's conscience, our way of making sure the past isn't forgotten. And you're the best keeper of that conscience we've had in generations. That made me feel proud and terrified at the same time. What if I messed up? What if I helped the wrong ghost or gave bad advice? Grandma must have seen my face. You'll make mistakes, Maya, we all do, but your heart is in the right place, that's what matters. I hugged her tight. Thanks, Grandma, she patted my back. Now about the new baby. Cousin Stephanie had her baby girl in April. They named her Luna. She was tiny and perfect and apparently already causing chaos. She'd been born 3 weeks early, dramatically in the hospital parking lot. Very Patterson of her. I visited them in the hospital, bringing flowers and a card. Stephanie looked exhausted but happy. "Want to hold her?" she asked. I took Luna carefully. She was so small, barely 7 pounds. Her eyes were closed, her little fists curled up. This tiny person would one day be 16, standing in front of the mirror, seeing something that would change her life. "She's beautiful," I whispered. Stephanie smiled. "She is. I hope she's ready for the Patterson family insanity." I thought about the mirror, about all the ghosts I'd helped. She will be, we'll make sure of it. Because that's what Patterson women did. We looked out for each other, living or dead, present or past. We told the truth, we found justice, and we made sure no one's story was forgotten. Even if that story was about picking the wrong William, or losing a bake-off, or having strong opinions about casseroles. That night I stood in front of the mirror. No ghosts appeared. The glass was clear, just showing my reflection. I looked at myself, 16 years old, tired but happy, the keeper of countless secrets and stories. "Thank you," I said to the mirror, "for trusting me with all of this." The mirror glowed softly, warmly, like it was smiling. Then words appeared in the glass. "Thank you, Maya Patterson. You've given us all something precious. You've let us be remembered." I felt tears prick my eyes. Being remembered. That's all any of us want, really. To know that our lives mattered, that our stories won't die with us, that someone will care enough to listen. I could do that, I would do that, for all the Patterson women who came before me, and for Luna when her turn came. The mirror faded back to normal. I climbed into bed, exhausted. Tomorrow I'd probably have another ghost with another problem, but tonight I could rest, because I'd done something good, something important. I'd given voice to the voiceless and peace to the restless, and honestly, that felt pretty amazing. Kyle knocked on my door. "Maya, you okay in there?" I smiled. "Yeah, I'm good." He poked his head in. "Good, because I just got a text from Aunt Helena. She says her house is haunted and she thinks it's a Patterson ghost. She wants you to come check it out." I groaned. "Are you kidding me?" Kyle grinned. "Welcome to your life. Also, she's offering to pay you in brownies." I considered this. Helena made really good brownies. "Fine, but tell her I want double chocolate chip." Kyle laughed. "I'll let her know." The great Maya Patterson, supernatural detective, negotiates in baked goods. I threw my pillow at him. He dodged it and ran down the hall, laughing. I looked at the mirror one more time. My reflection looked back, and for just a second I thought I saw all the Patterson women standing behind me. Adelaide, Veronica, Constance, Sylvia, Meredith, and all the others. We were connected across time and death by this strange family gift. This weird, wonderful, totally bizarre tradition. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Well, maybe for normal teenage problems. But then who would help the ghosts organize their socks? Definitely not Kyle.